Good morning. We are back at the Cloud Expo Asia, Singapore 2018 at the lovely Marina Bay Sands. If you've never been here before, I strongly recommend the infinity pool on the roof. So, we are joined today by Phil Scanlon, Head of Technology's APJ at Solace. Phil, welcome.
Thank you.
Now, let's start from the beginning. We're primarily a UK audience. We're in APAC, and we want to find out about Solace.
Yep.
Tell us what you do.
So Solace, I'll start from who we are. We're a Canadian company, a bit different from most technology firms these days, have a different view on the world. We've been around about 10 years. We're based in a very, very cold place called Kanata in Ottawa, which is just north of New York. Very different temperature from here, so it's about 50, 60 odd degrees of temperature swing when you go there. We basically create advanced event brokers. So we've been doing this technology for about 10 years. We cut our teeth in the trading sort of platforms, very high volume, very low latency. We built some very, very cool technology that's basically done us very well over those 10 years. But we've also more recently now been, as that technology is more applicable to more use cases, we've now moved into software and cloud and kind of the hybrid cloud kind of area. So events like this to kind of come and talk about it have been very useful for us.
It surprises me, most people venture into trading. You started right at the start with trading technology. That's terrifying. The amount, we're talking milliseconds. That this technology has to remain up and remain stable and solid. So you had a very quick schooling to begin with, and now you've gone into the, I would say, slightly easier thing of the general public.
The general.
But you, so I was looking around on your site, and it mentioned something called Event Mesh.
Yep.
What is Event Mesh?
Yeah, Event Mesh. So the concept start with events. So we're an event broker company. We don't do these kind of events. This is not what we do. An event to us is something that changes in the world. So someone places a trade, someone picks up a telephone, someone clicks on a website. All of these things are natural things that occur. So those to us are events. Now, the thing with the mesh is those events, as companies get bigger and bigger, or they do things like in a new cloud platform, or their IT estate grows, those events are very distributed, so they can happen anywhere. So the whole mesh concept is really to allow an interconnected series of event brokers, which we provide, to allow the participants, so the people that are clicking on websites, the back-end systems that need that feed of data, to be completely decoupled. So you talk to your local event broker, and then Solace takes care of getting that information to where it needs to get to. So the mesh is really around making it simpler for people to work on the problems like the applications, rather than worrying about data distribution, latency, buffering, moving lots of information around at scale.
We're obviously at the Cloud Expo in Asia, and the word, although cloud seems to now be a bit of it's an accepted term, and people have moved on and start talking about AI and things like that. Hybrid cloud, still a prominent conversational point. And you deal in private cloud, don't you? That's essentially one of the things you do. How have you found the trends around hybrid cloud? Why have you been involved in it? Why not just put everything in one place? What's been the logic behind it?
So a lot of it's around innovation, and so we started off purely in the internal data center. Our customers then had the opportunity. We've got a lot of customers that got very big data centers, and they're now thinking that the cost of running those, the cost of operating those, there are some cloud providers that are giving them a better option there. So they're wanting to run some of their compute now in that cloud environment. So our role is to move data around, so we need to make it easier for people to move into those cloud environments. And we do that using standards, so open standards. The idea being that when you move into a cloud environment, there are native event technologies in these clouds, but they're all proprietary to each cloud. So if a customer invests in that cloud provider, invests in that technology, if they look to move that compute back into the data center, because people will over time, or they'll move it to another cloud provider, they can get stuck. They've got to rewrite systems. So the whole idea with using open standards is you use an open standards broker in these environments that decouples the actual applications that are running there from the actual platform. It means that you can move things into that cloud very quickly, but more importantly, if you want to get out, you realize it's costing you too much, you've moved the wrong workload into the cloud, you can get it out, or you can move it to another cloud. So you don't get locked into a single cloud provider, you've got that arbitrage, you can do that. The other piece though as well is that being Canadian and being very, very open and very, very not wanting to lock people in, our technology is replaceable. So we use the open standards. You can take our broker, replace it with an open source or another technology. So if we don't innovate, if we don't remain the best broker, you can replace us without having to rewrite all your applications, which is historically what's had to happen in our space. So that's a real driver for innovation and allowing people to get in and out of cloud environments. The other piece is around, with things like AI and ML. You have your normal flow of your business. You want to tap at that data and get at it and push it through into an AI environment. So, Google Cloud has some great AI ML technologies. So does Azure, so does AWS, and they're all kind of competing and growing at the same time. So what we're seeing is people they'll move some of their compute into there, but all the data's the same. It's the same events. So you can tap into the events that are happening in the rest of your business and bridge them across into the cloud environment, bridge them into one environment for AI and a different environment for ML. Or if you decide that invest in technologies like Pivotal Cloud Foundry, bring that on-premise and do private cloud, where I kind of thought the infrastructure would be cheap, but actually it's cheaper if I run it myself. People are doing that, and we're very close with people like Pivotal to be able to run in their environments too.
Excellent. So you've got Event Mesh in one hand. This is my Event Mesh.
Yep.
This is an API. What's the difference?
Yes, so APIs historically have taken you request some information via an API. So historically that data is sort of sitting in a back-end database or sitting in an application, and you kind of build this API around it. It's very request response, but you run into challenges as people evolve, and a lot of the traditional API vendors are starting to see this as, the data isn't at the center of the world. So Gartner have kind of done some work on this, and they think about 70% of all new technology will be event first, event driven. So, you do need to get data into some system of record, but really events happen and you push them to where they need to be processed. So whereas an API takes a kind of a query kind of mode, eventing takes a kind of a push, but it also supports the query type as well, so you can kind of have the best of both worlds. With an API, you typically don't have the ability, if a back-end system's down, you push that all the way back to the client. The client gets told, sorry, that something's broken, and it can be quite embarrassing to someone whose API is down. With eventing and with using an event broker in the middle, you basically can have an API type request response, but you can actually hold that data in motion. So if the back end's down or if it's busy, you can actually queue it up and then handle bursts. So we had a very interesting use case with the tax department in India. They had an API-centric approach to filing your taxes. As everyone knows, it comes to the last day of the month, the last week, everyone tries to file it at the same time. India has a very large population, so that's a huge load on some pretty old systems. So what they basically did was put a layer of an event mesh in front of all of that, allowed the front-end websites to submit. We hold on to that data, so we can take data at the rate that the front end's sending that. We cache it up, we hold on to it, and we drip feed it to the back-end systems. So the last couple of years, what used to basically cause a lot of chaos in the last 3 weeks of tax filing, now there's no impact to the citizens, and there's about 3 weeks of catch-up on the back end that no one really sees, but it's actually, you've got a better quality of service, and critically, without having to rewrite all of your back-end systems to kind of change for this new world. So there's kind of just an example.
Okay, so we've had lots of examples, lots of theoretical approaches. What about live data? Can you tell me some case studies, some clients you've got, things like that?
Live data. So we have customers. To us, an event and data is just information we're moving around. So we have some customers that are taking things like video streams, and they're using those to fan out. So using our technology to kind of buffer that, fan out, allow one publisher, many subscribers. We have in Singapore live data. So if you're traveling around on the transit systems here, when you get on a bus, those buses are all basically IoT sensor devices. So they have a whole load of metrics: position, speed, location, number of people on board, when the doors open, the doors close. So the LTA who run that traffic system, they have real-time visibility of pretty much the bus systems. That information is used though to power the information displays. So when you're a citizen sitting at a bus stop, you want to know what buses are coming, you can go onto your app, you can say I'm at this bus stop, and you can see, not just based on the schedule, but you can actually see the arrival times, whether they're wheelchair enabled, whether they're full or not, whether it's worth waiting for another one. So that's kind of running now live here in Singapore. The next phase of that ERP2 is to basically take that technology and move it into the vehicles. So all of the cars will have real-time tolling. So rather than having gantries in and out of the city.
I saw this. We were in a taxi and it was like a flash. It was something out of the X-Files or something.
Okay.
Yes.
Hopefully it wasn't a speeding ticket. But it can be. So what they have is gantries, and as you pass through them, there's a dumb device in the car that basically pushes back to say, this is my vehicle. So you have a cash card in it and it deducts the card. You've got to go off and recharge that and do all sorts of things. So that system's been in place about 20 odd years. It's up for renewal. So rather than having these fixed entry point and exit points of the city, they're moving towards having basically real-time segment-based, this segment's busy, there's no point in charging tolls for other parts of the city. This is the bit that I want to charge a toll on, but I can actually warn people that are moving towards that hey, this bit's busy, so if you take an alternate route, you'll avoid the toll. So really giving that much more granular visibility of the traffic conditions and providing a better service to the citizens.
Amazing. Well, that's your technology. I also heard mention of, is it American Express?
Yeah, so we're a very horizontal technology. I mentioned we kind of cut our teeth in financial services, mostly on the trading floors, but in more recent years, a company like American Express they've got a massive estate of event technology based on some legacy from another vendor, and they've managed to replace they have about 3,000 servers. They're halfway through replacing those. They've replaced 1,500 servers with 12 of our appliances. So the data center space just to do that compute. But if you use American Express, you swipe your card, you can pay with points. Every authorization, every transaction goes over the top of Solace. We're doing about 3 billion transactions a day with them. So it's very, very high scale, very low latency. If you're paying with points, you expect to see the points straight away. So we provide that kind of distribution of information at global scale for companies like Amex. And we also do something very similar with Nets here in Singapore, so the payment exchange. You can pay now for food at a food court with a QR code. So you take a photo of it, it'll basically ask you how much you want to pay the vendor, you pay the vendor, and the receipt pops out literally within a second. So it's that, but that's the QR code is independent of the back-end banks. So my bank, the merchant's bank, the whole payment system is all kind of choreographed by Solace sitting in the middle, providing that connectivity.
Excellent, amazing. Well, it sounds as if you have your fingers in many, many pies in some very exciting areas. So, Phil, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That's been Phil Scanlon, the Head of Technology for APJ at Solace, a very interesting company. You are joining us at the Cloud Expo Asia, Singapore 2018. Phil has promised me he's going to give me some coffee, so we will be right back in a few minutes for the next interview. Thank you.